I'm Jim Knight, co-founder of the Instructional Coaching Group, and you're listening to Coaching Conversations, where I talk with coaching experts from around the world so that all of us can learn better ways to make an unmistakably positive impact on the people around us. Well, I'm really excited today to meet with Ammie Franklin and Jade West from Melbourne. They told me they live up near the airport at this amazing school. I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves a bit, and then we're going to talk about how they're using instructional coaching, the impact cycle for students, but also as leadership, as a process leaderships can use. And I'm so excited to hear what they've been doing, because I've been hearing all kinds of rumors about you from my friends in Australia all the way up here in Nebraska. So would you guys be so kind as just to introduce yourselves and tell us a bit about your school?
So my name's Ammie Franklin. I'm the Deputy Principal for People and Culture here at Salesian College in Sunbury. So we are a co-educational school, and we offer education for students from year 7 all the way through to year 12. We've got 1,780 students on our campus, and we're really proud to be able to offer them individualized pathways for their learning. And what's really important for us is they leave us as good Christians and honest citizens who are going to contribute really positively to society.
And my name's Jade West, and my role at the school is the Director of Staff Learning. And I suppose to support what Amy's talked about in terms of our focus with our students, I'm lucky enough to work with a team of 9 coaches who support our staff and work through coaching process to allow them to be really reflective and thinking about the needs of the students in their classroom and continue to grow. So it's a really exciting space, and it's something that's fairly new for us, sort of the last 5 years, but a way for us to really ensure that we're looking after both staff and students, ultimately benefiting student outcomes.
So what inspired you to get this coaching program going at Salesian College? What's sort of the story of how you got going?
So we've been operating our current coaching model for about 6 years. We're probably into our 7th. And what inspired it really was the opportunity to change up our leadership structure a little bit. We identified through the feedback from our staff a really great desire for meaningful, targeted, ongoing, and relevant professional learning. And from this, we did a little bit of investigation into coaching. We read Better Conversations, and that probably really was our inspiration, Jim, because we really wanted our leaders particularly to be having those conversations with the rest of their teams and also with our students. So it sort of came from that, and from there sort of evolved to make sure that we really had a focus on supporting adult learners and being able to create these collaborative spaces where we really did focus on the partnership principles to open up dialogue between people so that we could improve practice.
I love it. I wrote that book because I really need those skills. So it's helping me be a better communicator for sure.
Absolutely.
How did your focus areas, as I understand it from looking at the documents you've got, are instruction, inclusion, and classroom climate. Tell me how you decided to focus on those areas.
Yeah, so initially our broad focus was on pedagogy with our coaching program.
Right.
And we delved into the Victorian government's high impact teaching strategies as a sort of a playbook. But from there, we had COVID in between that, which really we saw a shift in the educational landscape, both for our educators, our teachers, and for our students. So we formed a university partnership with Federation Uni, led by Dr. Christopher Hudson. And through site visits, analysis of data, and really just reflecting on the experience that our students and staff were having coming back into a classroom, we identified these areas of instruction, inclusion, and classroom climate as being really essential to the growth of our students, but also our staff. We in Melbourne had some of the longest lockdowns in the world. So the impact on mental health for everyone was really significant. So we were lucky we started with our coaching program with pedagogy in mind, but really it has taken on a focus of supporting the well-being of others too.
Well, that's something I wanted to ask about, because it does seem you're balancing the focus on professional practice and educator well-being. How are you working that out? And Jade, feel free to go ahead, Jade.
I will, yeah. It's a really interesting thing, because I suppose I hadn't thought of it before about balancing the two. I think in a lot of ways they're inextricably linked. It's, we've got this professional program for staff that really focuses on being meaningful, being supporting staff to feel emotionally connected to what they're doing. And so the increased staff wellbeing seems to be the product of that. And so as we're sort of working with our coaches to ground everything they do in the partnership principles, where staff have got voice and they've got choice and there's that reciprocal sort of learning and reflection happening, we're seeing increased wellbeing of staff coming as a result of that. We sort of working with the coaches to think about this idea that the educational landscape is really tricky. It's increasingly complex. So staff are coming into those conversations and they have genuine challenges, and it is and should be a safe place to be able to share and unpack those where judgment's suspended. But I like to work with the coaches with the sense that if we can acknowledge those challenges, if we can allow them to share them in that safe space, but then use our language choices really carefully, a solution-focused approach, ensuring that we're really caring for that person. Ultimately, what I'd love to see after every conversation, and what we are seeing, is just that little sense of hope. They're leaving those conversations feeling a little step further along in whatever challenge they're facing. And so I feel that the coaching program really is supporting staff wellbeing in that way. It's the product of it. And I suppose the main thing that we keep in mind in that really important human-centered work is that we have a line. So we're not counsellors, and it would be really not irresponsible in a lot of ways to move past that line. So the way that we contract with our staff, the way that we maintain the focus on professional practice and outcomes does sort of support them to feel seen, valued, that sense of belonging in the school without crossing the line and perhaps delving into things that are not helpful for either party.
So am I hearing this right? That the teacher well-being is increasing because of the partnership approach, at least in part, which
Yeah.
means they feel like they have some autonomy, their voices matter, they're engaged in dialogue, and then I suppose they're seeing success as well. But it sounds like because they're seen as people, that's making a big difference in their well-being. Is that the way you see it?
Definitely. I think it's in a large school like ours, it is possible for a teacher to feel really isolated. And we have these regular conversations. Teachers here have their person. And that does more, I think, than any professional learning session or any opportunity to gather as a group and reflect in a broad way, because it's personal. And we're able to show them their successes. We're able to, I think practitioners are often harder on themselves than anyone would imagine. So having that space to be able to show them those moments of success has led to increased wellbeing, there's no doubt.
Well, you're making me think like there's the public self and there's the personal self.
Yeah.
So I think what the partnership approach, I'm a little biased on this, but what the partnership approach might let you do is open up about the private self, because you've got someone else you trust and someone you can talk to, and your voice matters and you're engaged in thinking. Whereas in other settings where you don't feel heard and when you don't feel seen, the private self might stay private. The things that are really issues to be dealt with, you have to deal with them on your own without someone else. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
it's really helped us too, Jim, to create that sense of collective efficacy across the college as well, which is a really big focus area and something that we track from year to year.
Well, it's pretty hard to have a collective efficacy without self-efficacy. And so I think
Absolutely.
the two are together. Can you think of a story that kind of captures how this has happened, this partnership approach or dialogical approach to coaching?
I can take an example from working specifically with the coaching team. So one of the things that's been really helpful for us is the use of video. And I know, Jim, that you really advocate for video and talk about it as sort of rocket fuel.
Yeah, I
And
feel like I could be coming to your school all the time. You sound like you're like you're my people. So, but anyway, go ahead.
yeah.
We're doing
Um,
video, we're doing the partnership principles, the impact cycle. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah. So We really have seen that accelerate the growth of our leaders. So we've had our leaders videoing their coaching conversations that they're having with their coachees, and they will then bring that to our coaching conversation, unpack it, and often I don't have to say anything. The coachee will come prepared, having watched the video. We'll watch it again together. And then we just delve straight into a conversation around goal setting for improvement in their practice, which we use the growth coaching model for that, which we've done a lot of training with too. And just seeing the shift in practice as a result of that one simple exercise has really just changed, it's really just accelerated the growth of our team over time, to be honest.
What's really crucial in that too is that we've been willing to put ourselves in and model that. So in terms of working with the coaching team, particularly this year, I've really tried to capture my own videos of coaching conversations. I do coach as well as lead the coaching team, so that on the ground we can be having those conversations and there's an understanding of, the discomfort of video. It's not necessarily something people are comfortable with straight away, but to be able to show that benefit and to be able to model it yourself is the starting point. So as Ammie mentioned, by working with the coaches in this way, then when they're working with their coachees, they've lived the experience. They recognize that it's complex and it's uncomfortable, but it ultimately has results.
Mm. I just did a podcast like this a few weeks ago with a researcher who did her doctorate on the impact cycle. And she had some people who use video and some people who didn't use video. And she said the people who video recorded themselves teaching, it was night and day, the impact versus those who didn't watch video. Video was that powerful when they can see themselves on video. So it's definitely what we're seeing too. How are you measuring the impact of this beyond stories? So what are you seeing in terms of the impact that's happening?
So we collect feedback from our teachers and from our coaches mid-year and at the end of each year. And that gives us some really specific insights into how we're tracking in terms of our own context. But we also do an annual staff survey where we look at instructional leadership, feedback, psychological safety, professional learning, and collective efficacy. And we really make it intentional when we're speaking with our coaching team and other leaders across the school that these are the areas that we really believe that these groups of people can have the most impact. So we really use that as a tool to monitor our growth. And we're able to get that feedback from all members across our school community, including teachers and our education support staff too, because we've been working a lot with our education support staff using a coaching approach as well.
The other thing that we're also doing is capturing student voice. So we're really interested in the connection, I suppose, between what's happening with the coachee and the students. In some classrooms, because we're encouraging it, students are becoming very aware that the teachers have coaches. And so we're able to have sort of direct conversations with students in the form of interview and also in the form of surveys to encourage teachers to capture the impact from the student perspective.
And that's a great thing to keep the momentum of the coaching cycle going as well, because our students will often know we're getting to the end of a term or the end of a unit, and they get their feedback survey from their coach, which is then another great point of reference that we can use to see if our strategies that we're implementing in our classrooms are having the impact that we really want them to.
Gosh, you're doing so many things. You also created this inclusion handbook. How did that come to be, and how's that been received?
Sure. So the inclusion handbook is actually not at this stage pitched at staff. It's actually for the coaches. And it's something that was created with a growing awareness, I suppose, of the complexity of the coach's role, but the opportunities for the coach to perhaps, having built a relationship, having cultivated that safe space for challenging conversations, because we don't want our coaching conversations to simply be, niceties. We want people who are working in those conversations to be thinking. And so one of the things that is a challenge in our school, and I'm sure in many schools, is how to support diverse learner profiles and needs in the classroom, and how to ensure that, I suppose, each student's gifts and talents are at the forefront, because it can be challenging. And so delving into ways, I suppose, to work with the coaching team through professional learning so that when they're in those conversations, they have reflected on themselves as inclusive practitioners. They've thought about perhaps, things like bias, like how do they as teachers get to know the needs and the personalities and the interests of the individual students in their class. And so that when they're going into those conversations, they recognize that part of their responsibility is not in any way to tell the teacher how to do this, but to open the space for the difficult conversation, to suspend judgment, to bring curiosity to those conversations, and to, where necessary, advocate for the students. So I prepared the inclusion handbook as the starting point for that, so that the coaches have a thinking point that they can dip in and out of when they're working with coachees and issues of inclusion come up. But that's complemented with our fortnightly meetings as a coaching team, where we focus on PL. So we've spent term one really delving into different aspects of inclusive practice, different ways that we can have coachees reflecting on who's in their room and how best to bring out their potential, and also to motivate them and help them to see that they can grow. And so this is, I guess, what coaches can do. They can create the space for conversations that perhaps teachers wouldn't be comfortable having in the open for whatever reason, that ultimately benefit every student in that room.
You guys haven't done anything at all in the last 5 years. My goodness. Well, for the guy, I'm going to ask you at the end, I'm going to ask you, tell me how the heck you did all this stuff. It's pretty impressive. So how does the coaching cycle fit into this? Peers, goals, and all those things. How does that fit into the process?
So obviously at the beginning of a year, we spend the main focus is, I suppose, making sure that we're building relationships, that we've got real clarity around what the role of the coach is and isn't. And that can be tricky because I think particularly if people are coming from different contexts, they may have had different experiences with something called coaching that is not necessarily in line with the culture we're trying to build here. So there is some time that's taken at the beginning of a year to just build a relationship and have that clarity. And that includes, of course, contracting and ensuring that everything is out in the open, transparent. But once that sort of happens, then we move into the impact cycle. We start to capture a range of data to collect current reality and move through that cycle. And it's obviously schools are busy and things happen, and there will be times where a teacher will come in and want to have a conversation about something related to their practice that might not necessarily be what the focus was in terms of the impact cycle the previous lesson. So it's fluid, but ultimately we hope that teachers are moving through at least 2 impact cycles across the year, often more.
Right. How do you keep the momentum going, especially in term 3?
Well, we're really lucky in terms of the way that the school is structured, because most of our courses are semester based. So by term 3, teachers are re-engaging with a new set of classes, getting to know their students, having a look at what the reality is of their practice with a new dynamic and different learner profiles and needs. So that momentum continues. And Amy's already mentioned that collecting student feedback is also a way that we continue to build that momentum. But I think just by its very nature, with the impact cycle and with the focus on peers goals, the momentum exists because what we're doing in those conversations by coming back to the cycle is showing progress. And I think that's very motivating when a person can see that slowly they're growing in their practice, they're having positive impact on their students. It may not be the way they thought it would work out, but it's still happening. The momentum continues.
Yeah, that Teresa Amabile talks about that progress principle. I'm doing it right here. I have all these tasks I need to do. So my window over here, I've got all the things I've done on one window, and the other window's got all these stickies of things I need to do. And sometimes I make a sticky and just put it on the completed one so I can see more progress as I put it together. Is there anything special you've done for new teachers versus more experienced teachers?
So just for context, Jim, we've got about 170 teachers and 30% of them are early career teachers. So in the first 1 to 5 years of their career.
Mhm.
So we face a really big challenge in Victoria with teachers, getting teachers into the profession and with teacher retention. So another, I suppose, strategic priority that's sort of really forced us, but Jade and I have always wanted to do this, to invest in coaching, is the need to be able to support those teachers to keep them in the profession. So with our early career teachers, it looks a little bit different. And the coaching sort of shifts a bit more between dialogical, directive, and facilitative. So depending on where the teacher is in their career and what their point of need is, we sort of adjust what happens as part of that impact cycle. Because sometimes they do need just that little bit of extra mentoring as opposed to coaching in the first instance. But we try to sort of phase that out so that it does become purely dialogical coaching when the time is right in that relationship.
So I guess Amy's raised a really interesting question about how you apply those partnership principles with an early career teacher, how you position them to still be driving what they're doing, because we know that if they are not emotionally connected to what they're doing, if it doesn't feel meaningful, it's less likely to have an impact. So one of the things that we have put in place is to have a fortnightly early careers professional learning opportunity. So the early career teachers come together and we facilitate PL on point of need, but it will be things that are really focused on their stage of career. So recently we had parent teacher interviews. So we ran a professional learning session where they got to have a practice, have a Q&A about all the sorts of things that they might be wondering before they go into that sort of situation. We have had a session on diverse learning and different ways to adjust practice or product to suit learners in the room. We've talked about lesson structure. And so what that does, of course, is they have the time to think as a group. They're connected to that group. They recognize that they're part of this really exciting group of teachers who are moving through. But then they're going into the coaching conversations and they're actually bringing something to those conversations. They've noticed something, they've learned something. And so there's that balance, because it does, it's sort of, to say that we're moving between dialogical and directive can seem a little bit, but how are we maintaining the partnership? I suppose that's how it is. They're able to bring things into those conversations because we're providing jumping off points. We're providing opportunities for them to reflect.
Yeah, I think the partnership principles and Chris Monroe and John Campbell's work on what's called growth talk, short little conversations that can be kind of coaching conversations. I think they really help with parent-teacher conferences. So I think if you can approach the teacher as a partner, or approach the parent as a partner, there's hope, for the conversation. It is kind of a crazy conversation. I'm going to tell you how to teach. You're going to tell me how to parent. We've got 10 minutes. Let's go. So it's a pretty challenging thing, but it's a great one. How have you, and you've said a lot about this, but do you want to add anything to how the impact cycle has been a part of leadership development?
So I suppose that's one of the pieces of feedback that Amy and I have really been grappling with over the last couple of years, where we haven't quite found that we had supporting our leaders through coaching quite right. And for whatever reason, I suppose we hadn't considered the idea of formally using the impact cycle and unpacking how that could be used for leaders. But the more we sat down and looked at that, the more we realized that the language, the process, it lends itself to leadership as much as it does to teaching practice. And so this year we're experimenting with using that, and we've made a couple of adjustments to how we do that. One of them is to overlay, I guess, over the top of the impact cycle, a vision building phase. So the coach will work with the leader on just really supporting, raising their awareness of the different aspects that affect their leadership. So things like themselves, the values they carry, the values perhaps they think they carry, but are they actually bringing them to the context we're working in? The context itself and some of the priorities, and whether there is any conflict there, other stakeholders that perhaps their actions have impact on. So being able to work with them at the beginning of a coaching year, I suppose, to create the big picture, to help them to see that their work is meaningful, not just for the team they're leading, but actually for the whole school. to build a sense of where the school's headed. And that sense, I suppose, as we've talked about, of a collective journey that leaders are undertaking as they're working with staff. And from there, funneling that to an area of focus for their leadership, and then working through impact cycles to work their way toward growth in that area. And what we've found so far, and it's still early, is that there are benefits to doing this because leaders are experiencing the same process that teachers are. And so when teachers talk about coaching, leaders understand its meaning and they understand that it works because they're experiencing it for themselves. And it also allows, I suppose, the opportunity, and many of our leaders do, to at certain points of the year suspend the focus on leadership and look at their own practice, because the cycle lends itself to moving back and forth in that way. So we're really trying to ensure that ultimately, as a school, we're taking an approach that's common, and that lived experience of coaching will take on a life of its own. Because I think you can hear about coaching as much as you like, but until you've experienced it and you've felt it, you really don't know how powerful it is.
Well, you're in a good place to learn about coaching. There's a lot of great coaches in Melbourne. So that's a fortunate part of it. Tell me, this is a question for both of you, but what are you most proud of as you look at the project, what you accomplished?
I feel really
Me-
proud, like Jade mentioned before, that everyone in our school has a person. And I think that that's really important because it allows them to be able to, feel connected and feel like they are not alone at work. And in a ever increasing complexity that comes with education, I think that that is the thing that's really holding us in good stead with all of the challenges that we face. And I think coaching allows us to be able to, do the human-centered work really well. And for me, that's the most important thing. And that's why I come to work each day, to make everyone's life better.
I agree. I think we're working very hard to create a culture of care here in an industry where lots of people often don't feel that, and we're allowing teachers to understand that they are vitally important, that their impact on students is really going to be amplified if people invest in them. So I think that we're really proud that we're putting our staff, at front and center so that the students will benefit from that. I'm also particularly proud of the way in which this is a fluid and growing space. I don't think it's ever felt like we're stuck or we've come to an end point. And I think that's exciting. We really do value feedback from staff, from students. We really want to grow. We want to get better at this all the time. And we're looking for ways to make impact for students in the classroom, but also for staff and their growth all the time. So I'm proud of that, because I think it would be easy to get to a point where we say, okay, we've got it, but that's not the reality of education. Education is changing and morphing all the time, and we're ready to go with it, which is exciting.
Well, and artificial intelligence is going to have a word to say about that too. So how did you do it? This isn't really a question we discussed ahead of time, but like, how did you, people just have to hire two brilliant people like you two, and that's the way it's going to, like, how did you make it happen?
Jade and I are really just fortunate that we are in the right place at the right time. And, professionally, we worked together before we started this coaching project, but it's really allowed us to be able to align our personal values and bring something that we really believe to life. But how do we do it? My goodness, I'm not going to lie, it's been a lot of hard work, but we've had a really clear vision about what we want to achieve as a school, and that sort of guided us along the way. This approach also allows us to be able to bring our Catholic values to life in a really meaningful way. So I think as a school, it's an important way that we can make sure that we are being truly Salesian in our approach. So that guiding vision has been really important. We have done an incredible amount of professional learning to be able to equip our coaches with the skills to be able to do this great work. And that's something that, again, Jade and I have worked in partnership the whole way through this process. And that's something that we're really committed to in an ongoing capacity too for our leaders. And I might hand over to Jade. She can talk to a little bit more, but yeah, vision for me has been the thing that I think has allowed us to be able to accomplish what we have, and tenacity alongside that.
Well, I think you've covered most of it. We're really lucky in terms of, I'm really lucky to be working with Ammie. I think we're very lucky to be working with teams that are really keen to do this. But it is also a really significant investment, and we've been lucky to have a principal that is open-minded and really, really willing to consider the what if and imagine with us. So we've been really lucky in that way that leadership has given us the space to be able to explore and be able to experiment. And it's, from our perspective, it's really paid off. So I suppose if there are principals and schools who are watching this and considering what an investment it might be, it really is worth it to dream big.
Mm. But it sounds like this is what I'm hearing in this conversation, and I'm so impressed by what you're doing. It sounds like vision plus kind of almost like relentless learning. I'm guessing you've made some mistakes and some things worked and some things didn't work. And so you sort of started, maybe better conversations was kind of a spark, but then there's growth coaching and there's other things you're learning along the way, the impact cycle. And then you're doing that and you say, we need to create this inclusion playbook. And as I would imagine that every time you make one step forward, there's two more possibilities opening up. But at the same time, it sounds like you're maintaining focus. It's not just, let's try this, let's try this. That focus on your vision of what you're trying to accomplish in terms of mutually humanizing conversations for everybody in the school, that's kind of a driving force behind it. That's what I'm hearing. And I love your term, Ammie, vision and tenacity. Those are two really cool things. What haven't I given you a chance to talk about that you want to share in this conversation? Is there something I've missed? I'm sure there is.
Mm-hmm.
I think the importance of networking. So Jade and I attend a lot of professional learning that is offered by Instructional Coaching Group online, which we watch at strange times here in Melbourne. We also do a lot of work with Growth Coaching International, which has allowed us to be able to open up some really great conversations and practice with other schools in Victoria and in other places around the world too. And just having those constant conversations and picking up on little things that are happening in other contexts, which we can bring back to enhance what we're doing, has been really, really important. So I think that is something that's really supported us.
Mm. I think one of the other things that is sort of worth unpacking is just how we've experimented at the moment with supporting our coaches. So recognizing, I suppose, that there is a significant affective side to the work that they're doing, and that very often they're coming away from a day because they've got a large team of coaches that they're working with, can be up to 20 people. So they're coming away, I suppose, with lots of thinking and lots of perspective. So we've worked really hard to provide different opportunities for them to reflect and also to develop a collective identity as a team. So the coaches have the opportunity to meet fortnightly with me individually so that we can unpack what they're experiencing, workshop, and so that they can, and their growth is, I guess, at the forefront, and we can look at what they need. We're also investing in them having a reflective practice with growth so that there's an external sort of aspect to their growth. And then we also have fortnightly meetings as a team where we engage in PL. So there's that sense of investing in them because they're a fantastic team. And we're getting to the point now where they're coming from different experiences in education. We've got members that have worked in wellbeing. We've got members that have worked in inclusion and so forth. And so they're coming to the team and those meetings being able to facilitate and share. And so the team becomes stronger because we're creating the space for that. So yeah, investing in the coaches and making sure that they're growing as well is vitally important.
Well, I also think that when people hear about the professional learning you provide and the ever increasing well-being of the staff and that culture of growth and support, they're going to want to come to work in your school. They'll hear about it and they'll say, oh, that's the place I want to go. I mean, increasingly new teachers are choosy about where they go because they want to go where their well-being is going to be addressed and where they're going to have a chance to learn and grow. And that idea that everybody has someone, that's just such a great concept too. So last question is, what's the future have to say? And Ammie, if you wanted to say more about what we haven't discussed, I'd love to hear that too. But anything you want to share, and then what do you see? What's next steps for you?
I think our next steps are really consolidating what we're doing with our leaders, and that's sort of our strategic goal for this school year, because we're about to split into 2 campuses as a college. So we need to be able to continue to build the leadership capacity of those that are working with us. And we want to continue to be able to attract really great staff who are going to enrich our community and who are going to really have that focus on student learning and the development of the whole student.
Yeah, definitely exploring leadership coaching and ensuring that also we're through that building opportunities for people to engage in coaching like conversations in just their daily interactions. But also, I think that space around inclusion is a space where we need to spend a bit more time. We've started that conversation. Coaches their awareness is raised about, I guess, the power they have in those moments. But that's just the starting point. So consolidating, really enriching the experience for staff here before taking on anything new.
Well, it's wonderful. I love this conversation. I'm so impressed by what you're doing. I hope we get to meet when I'm in Melbourne because you're doing amazing stuff. You're getting up at 4 a.m. or whatever it is to attend to our training as an instructional coaching group. So it's amazing, and I guess it never ends. There's always one more better thing we can do. There's always a chance to help kids and help our colleagues work. What really impresses me is we would say it all starts with kids. It starts with kids, but it also involves everybody else in the system too. And that's so cool you're doing that. Thank you both so much. Jade,
Thank
Ammie,
you.
what a pleasure. You guys are
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Jim.
doing amazing. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Thank you.